5 tips to become a successful SEO manager with Andy Frobisher. The In Search SEO Podcast is brought to you by Similarweb, helping you build better SEO strategies with digital intelligence, insights, and data. Hey, it's David. What are the skills you need to become a successful SEO manager? That's what we're discussing today with a man whose first paid job was to stand in police lineups at the age of 15. He's a former head of SEO at Digital Loft and current freelance SEO consultant. A warm welcome to the In Search SEO Podcast, Andy Frobisher.
Hello, nice to be here.
Hey Andy, thanks so much for coming on. You can find Andy over at andyfrobisher.com. So Andy, why are some SEOs bad managers?
Don't think necessarily that SEOs are necessarily bad managers. It will probably come down to a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 reasons. One, that maybe actually managing people isn't suited to them and their skill set, and maybe they're better off just being a specialist in one particular area, whether that's, technical SEO or strategy, for examples. Or it could just be that, quite often as people get promoted from a doing position where they're used to doing a lot of the work, they go into an SEO manager position where they're actually more responsible for the strategy side of it and then managing the workflows with the team and developing that team. And maybe as people go into those roles, they find it hard to adjust, and there might be a lack of training and a development from their side on how to become a successful SEO manager. And I think a lot of times that's possibly where people might fail in that role, because it is quite a different role and quite a big jump when someone goes from that doing to more of that strategic thinking role.
I guess the challenge is that quite often the best technical SEO doer ends up becoming the manager just because they're good at the task. But are you saying that that's not necessarily the right jump for that person to take?
Yeah, one thing that I've learned is, don't always sort of like shoehorn people down one particular path. They've got to the point maybe where they're a senior role in technical SEO. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll be a great SEO manager. Not everyone needs to be a manager. Not everyone wants to be a manager. There's always development in specialist areas. Let them become a specialist in one area. If that's not something that's within their skill set or is most suited to them, then you don't have to become this point where you're managing clients, managing accounts, managing people within a team, managing strategies, making sure that XYZ is delivered on time to budget and to KPI. That isn't necessarily for everyone.
I guess the challenge is pay bands, because you quite often find the doer has a lesser overall pay band than the manager. Is that not necessarily correct?
For me, it comes down to skill set. If you can find someone that can do the job of 2 people because they have the experience and they know how to do something in a timely manner, it's going to, the level of work is going to be excellent. Those are people that are hard to find, and, and they deserve to be paid for that. And their skill set can be as good as someone who is in that management position that is not necessarily doing certain day-to-day management tasks. So, finding a specialist in an area that are sometimes hard to employ and could, be worth its weight in gold, there's no reason why you shouldn't be paying them to the level of, say, an SEO manager or an SEO lead or a department head, for example.
So we've majored on the people that shouldn't necessarily become SEO managers so far, but today you're actually sharing 5 tips to become a successful SEO manager. So that starts off with number 1, get good at delegating.
Yeah, I put this at number 1 because quite naturally, and this was me, when I first stepped up from a sort of like senior strategist role into the SEO manager role, you go from delivering that strategy, doing a lot of the day-to-day work, to suddenly actually I'm now in charge of all these clients. I'm responsible for a certain amount of people to deliver the work. I'm that used to doing the work that I'm still actually holding on to it. And what happens is you struggle to let go of some of that work, and then you end up burning yourself out because you're doing the role of two people. You might have other people in the team that are feeling a little bit frustrated because they're maybe not getting the work they're expecting to, because you're not delegating that work on. So as early as possible, get used to delegating work out. Become good at delegating.
Is it fair to say get used to the quantity of work and perhaps even the quality of the work not being quite as good as you used to do to begin with, because other people need that period of time to train and get better?
Yeah, and that goes nicely possibly into my second tip, which is, accept that people are going to make mistakes and they're going to learn from them. And this goes into that delegation. I think another thing that possibly people have, and, I've had this when I've gone through development plans and training plans for people that have moved into management positions, is they've constantly got this need to say, well, I'll do it because I know I'll get it done quicker and I know it'll be right. And it's like, yes, that's fine. But if you don't delegate this task to that person, how are they ever going to learn that? How are they ever going to adapt themselves to get that skill set to where you are? You can easily just sort of go, right, I'll just do it because I know I'll get it done quicker. I know exactly what to do. But it is worth spending that time with people to delegate a task, to train them through it, to give them feedback, to accept that things might not be right first time. We all learn from making mistakes. I've made some big mistakes, in my 10-year career. And you learn from that. Next time, that that's not the right thing to do. You need to do things differently. And that is how people naturally do things. So yeah, it's really important to get good at delegating very early on.
And tip 3, hold yourself to the same standards as you'd hold your team to.
Yes, I think this is a really important point. And when you become a manager, it's easy to kind of just go, well, I'm a manager now, I'm not responsible for any of that. They're doing it. But really, you should lead by example, and the standards that you're setting your team, you should be showing those standards to your team as well. Whether that's how to do particular work, show that you're the person that can still do that. I think it's really key to be a team player. So if there's someone on holiday or someone's sick, throw your hat into the ring and get a muck in, get jobs done. Show your team that, you can lead on those things, that if push comes to shove, you're still the go-to person. So, and be prompt and clear with your communication, don't just expect that people know exactly what you're doing, because in your role previously, you would expect clear and concise information. Make sure that everyone understands their job roles and what they're doing, and just be a leader, learn how to lead by example. I think that's really, really important. So as well, if your behavior as well as a manager, set those standards of behavior for yourself and your team. If you are bad-mouthing a client, they're going to feel that it's acceptable to bad-mouth a client. If you turn up late to meetings regularly, they're going to feel that it's acceptable to turn up late for meetings. If you're not replying to your team members or clients in a timely manner, they will feel like it's acceptable to do that as well. So really set those standards and live by them. And that is a really good way to make sure that your team will live by the same standards as you, and you will have a team that you can trust to get the job done properly.
And tip number 4, have a clear progression and performance plan for all of your team members and review it regularly with them.
Yes, I've had quite a lot of conversations with people since I've gone freelance that work in-house, and especially when people are maybe slightly frustrated with their progression. The first thing I always ask them is, well, do you talk about your progression plans in your one-to-ones? And they say, I don't really have a one-to-one. I haven't had a one-to-one with my manager for 6 months, a year. I go, okay, well, what's written in your progression plan? And they go, we don't have a progression plan. And this is what happens when, members of staff go, look, I've been doing this job for 2 years. I feel like I'm ready to progress. I feel like things are going a bit stagnant, and it's because they don't have this clear path on where their career is taking them, where their job is taking them, how are they progressing, what do they need to improve on, what are they doing really well. The first thing that I always say is put in regular one-to-ones with your team members. That might be just once a fortnight, or it might be once a month. It can be an informal check-in, but it's also a chance to talk about progression, how they feel they're doing, and also to offer some feedback. And then create that progression plan, and that's something that can be discussed every quarter or every 6 months, with the aim to either have a review 6 monthly or annually. And then they know exactly what they have to work on in terms of their career progression and job role. You can give feedback on where things are going well, where they need to keep improving. And then that also gives you a clear set of documents to maybe go to people higher up to sort of showcase, look, this person's been doing really well, set this career progression plan, they've hit every milestone that we've asked them to do. This person is a key candidate for promotion or a pay rise, for example. Having those in place, make sure that, your team feel like they know exactly what they need to do. They feel like they're involved. They feel like they're working for someone where career progression is a thing, and they have something to work toward. And I feel like that's really important. When I first stepped in to the role of management, that was one of the first things that I put together, because I've been in roles in the past where my career progression was very blurry, and every 6 months to 12 months you would ask about it and you would get some very blurry replies and answers, and it is frustrating. And you end up kind of almost feeling unwanted and a bit demotivated. And that's where you begin to get potential high staff churn rates.
I used to do team one-to-ones on a weekly basis when I was an SEO team manager. Is that too often?
It depends on the individual. Some individuals might want to have a weekly check-in. Some people might feel like that's too much. And I like to give people the choice. If you say I'm going to be in touch with you every week, some people might feel that that's a little bit overloaded. Some people might just want to be getting on with their job.
Okay, that's good advice. So essentially, if you've got your team of 6 or 8 or whatever, you talk to them, and if you give them the option, then they're not going to have an issue if you don't sit down with them on a weekly basis.
Yeah, exactly. People in my team generally were happy with when I was managing fortnightly conversations. If I felt there was training issues and we needed to go a little bit more in depth, we would create some time every week to go through those. So we would create additional time to go through particular training things and give feedback. Some people that were possibly a little bit more senior were just happy once a month to have a check-in. You've got to play it by the individual and also maybe their experience.
And I guess this relates to tip number 5, trust your team to get things done.
Yes. Do not fall under the path of becoming a micromanager. I don't think it's healthy for the manager or the people that are working with them. You have to give your team an element of trust, and trust goes both ways. If you can trust your team to get the work done, and get the work done to a good standard, then they will trust you as well, and they will work harder for you. You need to build trust with your team, and by showing that you trust them will go a really big way for them to start to repay you. I've been a manager for 3+ years. I've never been in a situation where things haven't been done and clients have complained they're not getting anything. Ultimately, if you give people that trust and that autonomy, they will get it done. Yes, you may give direction on where priorities lay and if priorities change, and you may ask for the occasional status update on where things are at and if they need any help or any steer on things. You are directing them in a way, but you give them that trust element to know that they're going to get it done, and make sure you have the programs and systems in place to ensure that as well.
And in your opinion, is it more effective to be face-to-face with your team? Can you be a good manager of people and work remotely?
I think you can be a good people manager and work remotely. Post-COVID, most of my team were remote workers. I had people working all over the UK, so it was quite difficult to get people face-to-face all at the same time. We would only really do that once a quarter. Obviously, face-to-face, you can do a lot more. You can sit next to that person. It's easier to possibly go through feedback face-to-face. But there's no reason why you can't be a good people manager and a good manager in the remote world. We have all the tools available to us. It's just making sure that you are a good delegator and a good communicator. You know, you're utilizing technology that's available for you, whether that's video conferencing or dictation tool, because sometimes people work better when they can listen to some instruction rather than read some instruction. It could be that you need to just film yourself doing something on video so people can see what you're doing and then they can watch that back. There's lots of ways in which you can make sure that, you know, you're an effective communicator and manager.
Let's finish off with
the Pareto Pickle.
Pareto says that you can get 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts. What's one SEO activity you would recommend that provides incredible results for modest levels of effort?
I would say work in short bursts. So I can't remember the exact name of the method, but work in 20 to 50 minute bursts, have a break, work in another burst, and make sure you're at your most productive when you can work in these short bursts. Take regular breaks. You know, when you're doing a task for a long time, you might be really into a big task. It can be quite easy for you to fall under this area where you're not feeling very productive, you're not enjoying the task, and you just sort of sat there staring at a screen. And before you know it, you've wasted 20 minutes. So think about working in short bursts.
The Pomodoro technique.
That's the one, yeah. Another tip is at the start of your day, look through your list and get used to prioritizing your tasks. It could be using color coding, it could be numbers, but your top tasks, your number one tasks, get them done out of the way first thing in the day as quickly as you can. And then you know you've got the most important stuff done out of the way when you're most productive, and then you can move on to your lesser important task.
And the second one, I would say Eat That Frog, Brian Tracy book. If you've heard of that one, get the horrible thing done first.
Yes, I think it is called Eat the Frog, isn't it? Yeah, so you're eating those top tasks and you're working your way down, yeah, in that way.
I've been your host, David Bain. You can find Andy Frobisher over at andyfrobisher.com. Andy, thanks so much for being on the In Search SEO podcast.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for listening. Check out all the previous episodes and sign up for a free trial of the Similarweb platform over at similarweb.com.